Residents within a 1-mile radius of the derailment were ordered to evacuate immediately. Resident Melissa Henry recalled the moment she knew she had to leave with her son.
It smelled like really strong paint thinner, and then his eyes turned like bloodshot and he started coughing, and I was like, yeah, we're leaving.
After a controlled release of the toxic chemical from 5 of the derailed train cars, local officials consulted the Environmental Protection Agency and lifted the evacuation order on Wednesday.
There are new questions about the safety of the air and water in East Palestine, Ohio, following the derailment of a 150-car train carrying hazardous chemicals on February 3rd. Now, on February 3rd, about 50 cars of the Norfolk Southern train went off track in Ohio, causing a days-long fire in the area. 10 of the 50 derailed cars contained hazardous chemicals, including vinyl chloride, something we talked about on the show before, which were among some of the combustible liquids that authorities feared could set off a major explosion. The rail operator, Norfolk Southern, carried out a controlled burn, which is what you see on screen right now. And they did this in order to avoid an explosion. Although there are some concerns that this was a bit of a shortcut. They could have potentially done a different method of transferring the chemicals onto different train cars instead of just doing a controlled burn, which of course releases these toxins into the air. But for some people who live in the area of this derailment, they're not necessarily buying what they're hearing from the EPA. The EPA says that they've been doing tests of the air and the water, and they say everything's fine, everything's safe. But they're experiencing something a little different, including burning eyes. They're noticing dead fish in the creek. And one hazardous materials specialist told WKBN, quote, "We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open." So that's referring to the so-called controlled burn, which releases the toxic chemicals into the air. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources said the chemical spill resulting from the derailment had killed an estimated 3,500 small fish across 7.5 miles of streams as of Wednesday. But the state EPA says they're going to continue monitoring, and so far they have not found unsafe levels of chemicals in the water or in the air.
So this is part of the problem with the culture of corruption, because I used to trust the EPA. Now I'm not at all sure. So the Department of Transportation, I don't trust at all, run by Pete Buttigieg, absolute lover of corporations. I mean, Jesus, the airlines and the trains are an enormous disaster in this country. He hasn't fined him $1. He's a joke. He's a joke. They're like, oh yeah, he's looking into it now. Oh, is he?
Guys, he didn't even release a statement about it for 10 days, nothing. Absolute silence about it. And it wasn't until the right wing got on his case recently that he finally put out a tweet or two about it.
And so,
come on.
And so look, I'm gonna give credit here to The Lever, who's done brilliant reporting on this. That's David Sirota's organization, you should check them out. He almost embarrassed the national media into talking about it. Now the right wing has picked it up. Now the national media, when the left wing is talking about it, oh yeah, you're just bitter because you think you're gonna run, Bernie Sanders is gonna run against Buttigieg. No way we're covering it. But now that the right wing's covering it, all of a sudden it's a giant story.
Yeah, let me just be clear about one thing, because I don't wanna waste any time like dealing with an angle to this story that's totally irrelevant, because fact of the matter is, whether you're talking about corporate Democrats or corporate Republicans, they're the same thing when it comes to regulating big industry. Okay,
so that's exactly.
Let's just keep it real. The Trump administration deregulated the rail industry as it pertains to the transport of chemicals that are dangerous, toxic chemicals, right? And the Biden administration has yet to reverse that deregulation. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
So that's what I'm trying to get at, guys. Whether you're been brainwashed by Democratic media or right-wing media, snap out of it. Obama said he was going to do a regulation on the brakes in the trains. They're from like 150 years ago, like the technology, right? And we have new brake technology that's way better and can prevent many of these accidents, okay? Because there's derailments nonstop. And by the way, these trains are going through the middle of Pittsburgh. And this chemical is dangerous. There's another chemical that's far more dangerous that like just 20 of those cars can be like the equivalent of Hiroshima or something. We got the exact numbers in a sec. So guys, Obama didn't push it through, the regulations. They dragged their feet. Then Trump came in and said, oh, no way I'm doing regulations. Forget the brakes and hazard chemicals. Of course you can carry hazard chemicals that are hazardous and flammable, etc. And then Biden comes back in, and you know what he's done to actually put those safety regulations in? Nothing, zero. Isn't that funny? Corporate Democrat, corporate Republicans, corporate Democrats, and no action ever gets taken.
Okay, so let's get to the other facts of the story. And I want to talk about how the EPA seems to be saying two different things, okay? So when it comes to the residents in the area who are concerned about the water and the air, the EPA is like, don't worry, we've been testing, everything seems fine. But there's something a little different. Ohio officials said Wednesday that residents could return home after air quality samples showed readings at points below safety screening levels for contaminants of concern. But the EPA, which is overseeing the air quality testing, also said air monitoring since the fire went out has not detected any levels of concern in the community and can be attributed to the incident, that can be attributed to the incident at this time. However, the EPA said Friday in a letter to Norfolk Southern, this is the rail company, of course, that chemicals carried on the train continue to be released to the air, surface soils, and surface waters. In fact, Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine was asked about this during a recent interview. Let's hear what he had to say.
Your office deemed it safe for residents to return to East Palestine of Wednesday of last week. Days later, we learned that the EPA informed the railroad of several other chemicals that were not publicly discussed. How can you assure people that the area is safe when we're still learning more about the severity of this disaster?
You know, we rely on the experts, what they tell us. We continue to monitor the air. We continue to monitor the water. They continue to tell us, the EPA continues to tell us that it is in fact safe. Where we've seen some traces is in the water, which has gone into the Ohio River. Again, the experts tell us that it is such a small quantity that we really should not worry about it.
We really should not worry about it, but there's also a lack of transparency as it pertains to the type of chemicals that the train was carrying. At first, we only heard about vinyl chloride, but then it turns out there were other chemicals that everyone was kept in the dark about, and we didn't find out about them until very recently. The next video explains that.
The city lifted the evacuation order on February 8th and assured residents that extensive testing shows the air and water are safe. But officials have yet to release a complete manifest of what was aboard the train. Jamie Koza, who lives just steps from the river, is concerned about her 3-year-old daughter and what East Palestine's other children could be exposed to in the water.
I definitely have a right to know what was on that train, to see that manifest, to know what chemicals are in the creek, and also how much.
Now, new details igniting new fears. A letter the Environmental Protection Agency sent to Norfolk Southern revealed the cargo included more potentially hazardous materials than vinyl chloride, chemicals used to make adhesives, plastics, construction materials. The EPA telling the train operator it could be responsible for cleaning up the site.
The EPA telling Norfolk Southern they might be responsible for cleaning up the site. They might be responsible for cleaning up the site. They might be responsible.
Yeah,
well,
no.
Well, who else would be responsible exactly? The residents who are now being potentially poisoned by the toxic chemicals that were being carried by that train that was derailed?
Isn't that interesting? Republican Governor Mike DeWine and a Democratic Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg so far completely agree. Nothing to see here, guys. Whatever you do, don't punish the railroads. They're making billions of dollars in profits. They cut their staff to the bone. They used to have 1 million people. They only have 200,000 employees now. They've done no safety regulations. We've never enforced it. Oh, coincidentally, they're filling up our coffers with giant amount of campaign contributions. But don't worry, those are not bribes. No, they think it's the right thing to do to not regulate any of these companies and just let them have giant fireballs of chemicals near your house.
No, I mean, the EPA tells them they might be responsible for the cleanup. The word might says a lot about how things work in this country.
Exactly,
right?
That's why I don't trust the EPA. So, I mean, it's so sad they got us to a point where I don't trust the EPA. Where if a government, Democrat, it doesn't matter if it's a Democratic president, The government used to actually look out for us, and that's what it's supposed to do in a democracy. There are representatives. But now when the EPA or any other part of the government says, oh, no, don't worry. This corporation should not, maybe might be responsible, but overall everything is safe and fine. I don't believe you.
Okay, now finally, I want to tell you the specifics about the deregulation that happened under the Trump administration and was maintained under the Biden administration. So the US Transportation Department, that's the department that Pete Buttigieg is the head of, but back in 2020, under Trump, approved a rule to allow liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to be shipped via rail with no additional safety regulations. Trains can now run 100 or more tank cars filled with 30,000 gallons of the substance, largely from shale fields to saltwater ports. Just 22 train tank cars filled with LNG hold the same amount of energy as the Hiroshima bomb, a coalition of environmental groups wrote in comments to regulators opposing the LNG rail rule change in 2020. Now, that was under the Trump administration, tail end of the Trump administration. So now that Biden's in charge, now that you have Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, as the head of the Department of Transportation, what now? Well, under the Biden administration, the Transportation Department has proposed a suspension of the Trump-era LNG rule, allowing the substance to be transported via rail and to replace it with a new rule. The suspension was supposed to be published by June of 2022, but it and the new rule have been delayed twice. I wonder why, and are now supposed to be final in March. We'll see if that happens.
The reason I mentioned right-wing media earlier is because that's the only thing that anybody in Washington responds to. So there's some chance that Buttigieg is going to do a cover your ass operation, and he's going to be like, oh yeah, well I was going to release those rules any second now. Here's like a fraction of the rules that you need, and then the rest of the media will come out and go historic safety regulations from Mayor Pete, and then there'll be another explosion. By the way, as we were speaking, apparently there's been another spill. So I'm going to report it from our own members. I just saw it from the members. Earl wrote in, hey TYT, breaking news. I got a hazmat warning 20 minutes ago saying not to leave the home, not to breathe the air, not to run any AC. Incident happened a mile from my home, kind of nervous. I'm totally serious here. I know because Cat Daddy 23 wrote in on Twitch. Don't know how much reporting there's going to be because it just happened, but there's a chemical spill in Tucson, Arizona. So bad hazmat's been sent, and the people in the area are being told to shelter in place, turn off anything that takes the air from the outside and puts it inside. Guys, corporate rule is squeezing us and squeezing us. Now there's like trains and explosions going off everywhere, mass shootings. The whole country's falling apart because we can't ever touch a corporation. They could do anything they want. They can create any kind of mayhem, damage, murder, you name it. I mean, we did a story with PG&E the other day where the company was convicted of manslaughter and none of the executives went to jail. So there's never any consequences. These corporate media is lying to you. Corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans are not on your side. They're on the side of the enemy, the corporate machines that are causing all of this damage. Here at TYT, we work to cut through all the establishment media's biases and bring you the news from a factual and progressive viewpoint. Now allow me to introduce you to Ground News, a new tool that you can use to stay informed on what's really going on around the world. Ground News doesn't just bring you the information, it also provides you with an easy to use rating system that measures each article's political leanings, factuality, and gives you complete transparency on who owns the news that you're reading. Like today, I was on their site and I saw an article about some improvements in the ozone layer. And I was a little skeptical because good news about the climate is pretty rare these days. But with over 100 sources originating from an even spread of news organizations, I was confident that what I was reading was true. So score one for Earth. So get the whole picture and break through the corporate media agenda by subscribing to Ground News today.